How do you follow up a hit product like the iPhone 4? Well, I'm really pleased to tell you today all about the brand new iPhone 4S. Of course, it's glass in the front and back and has that incredible stainless steel band around it, making it the thinnest smartphone. A5 chip that we've launched just this year in the iPad 2 is now making its way into the iPhone. Dual-core processor. It delivers performance that's up to twice as fast at CPU tasks. It's also dual-core graphics. It's going to be up to 7 times faster than they were in the previous iPhone. An 8-megapixel sensor. This lets you take photos that are 3264 by 2448. Technologists have teased us with this dream that you're going to be able to talk to technology and it'll do things for us. That's a feature in the iPhone 4S we call Siri.
What is the weather like today?
Here's the forecast for today.
Remind me to clean up tomorrow.
Okay.
How many ounces in a cup?
This might answer your question.
Where's Rick?
Here's Rick.
Oh, no, it's not Rick. Now, how's the traffic headed downtown?
Here's the traffic.
Oh, it's terrible.
So recently, another tech YouTuber told me that if I wanted to grow on YouTube, I just need to do trending topics, only review newest products, and never do interesting videos. So I bought an iPhone 4S. I hope that's what he meant. Do you think that's what he meant? Well, anyway, I decided to switch to the iPhone 4S for an entire week from my iPhone 13 Pro Max. That was a mistake, and I'll tell you why right after this.
This is, you know you listening to Travis.
What up, players? Welcome back, and for all you new people, welcome. My name's Travis, and I do tech videos every single week, and this week we're talking about the iPhone 4S and why I decided to switch to it for an entire week. Let's get into that video. Now, I wanted to do something interesting for you instead of just doing reviews of the newest, latest, and greatest. I mean, everyone does that. No one's taking an iPhone 4S and switching to it for a week, and I found out why, because it's a terrible experience. But let's talk a little bit about the history of the iPhone 4S. The iPhone 4S was announced back in 2011. Man, so long ago. And it was the follow-up to the very popular iPhone 4, the you're holding it wrong phone. Remember that? But this thing still has a place in history. This thing was announced the day before Steve Jobs passed away. That's a huge deal. Like, this was the last thing that launched before Steve Jobs passed away. Imagine what he would think if he saw something like this. But the reason that I chose the iPhone 4S isn't because it was the follow-up to that incredibly popular phone. It's that it actually introduced Siri. That's just the thing that I remember. I remember the iPhone 4S being announced with Siri, and I wasn't even an iPhone user. Didn't buy an iPhone at that point, never used one for many years after that. I just remember them going on stage, showing all the things about the 4S, which I was like, yeah, so what? And Siri came along, and I was a little bit interested. At that point, there were all types of voice assistants on Android, and I'd used all of them, but none of them were very good. And what Apple was promising with Siri was something more conversational, something more useful. Now, I guess depending on how long of an Apple user you are, you may or may not agree that they've ever succeeded in that, but I think it's pretty obvious that it's substantially better now than it was when it came out. So I figured I'd go back to this thing and see what it was like. Now, number one, this thing is comically small. Comically, like, how did people use phones this small? If you compare it to my iPhone 13 Pro Max, the phone I'm using now, it's ridiculous. Look at this. This eats this. This is the most silly, ridiculous thing that I've seen in my life. Thus, that becomes one of the biggest problems I have with this phone is the small screen size. There's some other issues I had too, and I actually kept like a little journal along the way every night, taking some video footage of myself telling you what I thought every day that I used this. But before we get into that, let's talk about my sponsor for this video, Trend Micro. My security is kind of at risk. You see, when I'm buying an old device like this, someone could have modified it in some way without me knowing and then steal all my information. As a matter of fact, people have constantly tried to get into my accounts ever since I became a YouTuber. It's becoming obvious that even though for the past 2 years I've trusted Trend Micro to protect my network, I need something even better. Introducing the Premium Security Suite by Trend Micro. Premium Security Suite offers a complete device and identity protection across PC, Mac, mobile phones, and tablets. It's their most comprehensive security solution, protecting everything that you use, including ID security. Monitor and receive alerts if your personal information is found on the dark web. And with a personal data search, it allows you to see if your email address, credit card number, passwords, bank accounts, or more have been leaked due to data breaches. And these things happen all the time. Trend Micro has you covered. Your data may already be out there due to a large data breach from one of the many companies that have been breached over the last couple of years. It happens all the time, and with the dark web monitoring, you're gonna be in the know. If you're interested, there's a link in the description below and a discount. I got a discount for you, so make sure you check that out. And thanks to Trend Micro for keeping me safe and sponsoring this video. Well, day one down with the iPhone 4S, and listen, I don't know how much battery health this thing has because it's stuck on iOS 9. Which is kind of crazy, but I hate the size, for sure. I hate the size. The phone is slow. Now, I don't know if this was something that the people experienced when this thing first launched. My guess is probably not, because this has iOS 9 on it now, which did not exist when this thing launched. And there was, of course, the scandal of Apple slowing down phones as they got older, and this probably would have been one of them. It is slow as a snail on a cold day trying to get through snot. It's terrible. I also had to buy a new charging cable because I forgot this thing doesn't have lightning, so that was cool. And I don't like this so far. I was today years old when I found out that older apps on the iPhone don't work. That is to say, if I wanted to install Twitter or Instagram on this thing, I can't. Not because Instagram didn't exist when this thing came out, or Twitter didn't exist when this thing came out. It's just that the apps don't work anymore. You're thinking, well, just get an older older version of the app. Well, that would be nice, but when you go to the App Store, there's only one version available. Of course, high quality video again from the iPhone 4S. Look at this lighting. This is terrible. I have to show you what it looks like on iPhone 13 Pro Max. But anyway, the battery is amazing. It lasted me an entire day. It's kind of incredibly perfect, honest. But I guess it's because I don't really like to use this thing very much. Like, almost not at all. I can't really use any apps on it, so I basically am down to email and phone calls and text, and that's about it. This was a horrible experiment. I hope y'all are enjoying this, because this is torture. I typically spend a lot of time on this channel explaining why you should use old tech. But in this particular case, I'm kind of stuck, because this phone doesn't work the way it did even when it first came out, because you can't get apps on it like you used to be able to before, because for whatever reason, when the support stopped for this phone, they didn't just make it so that you get the old version of the app, you just straight up can't get the app at all, which means I'm not even really using this phone that much, other than for calls and texts. And then of course I can go web browsing on it, but why would I do it on such a small screen? Yeah, it's kind of a peek back into things, but I guess also this isn't exactly the kind of experience that Apple had in mind when they first created this phone, because again, it's on iOS 9, it's slowed down, it's possible that, you know, the processor's been slowed down to save the battery, as, you know, has happened in the news. But this is definitely not an Apple experience at all. And while the quality in general isn't that bad, it's just everything about it is so antiquated. Really tells you how far we've come in the amount of years we've had since this thing came out. Now, as I said in the video, iOS 9 on this thing is actually really slow, and I don't know if you remember this, there was actually a lawsuit about that, because when you put iOS 9 on here, it's so slow. Probably one of the reasons that Apple did not recommend or even support iOS 10 on this thing. That's why it only goes up to 9. And they even gave you an ability to go back to iOS 6. See, that's what I was saying in this review, is that you upgrade this thing to iOS 9 and it seems unusable, but that's because it kind of was, and it probably never should have gotten iOS 9. The hardware in this thing can't support it. It's just not reasonably so. Now, we've come a long way, whether it be from photos or the video quality or whatever the case may be. And I wish that I could have used this with actual apps, but obviously apps didn't work with this thing. What I did notice is that this thing is a simple device. It wasn't really meant to do all the things that our current device does, but back then, I think our expectations were so low that it was blowing our minds. I mean, the thing had a headphone jack, remember that? And the construction of this thing is still really beautiful. Like, even today, by our standards, this thing is still a looker. But it's a tiny look. Look how low, that's a tiny looker. But back then, having a personal assistant in your phone along with 1080p recording was blowing people's minds. So they took an already existing popular phone, the iPhone 4, made it a little bit better, and sold a buttload of these things. 1 million in less than 24 hours and 4 million in less than 5 days. That is insane. If you think about how many phones that is nowadays, there's tons of phones that never sell that many over the life of their existence. This happened in 4 days. Back in 2011. But this also was a time when you would more naturally upgrade from one phone to the other year over year. It was a more natural thing for you to do because there was always a really big difference between the previous phone and the current phone. And the phone that followed this was a pretty big change as well. Hit subscribe if you want to see more about that, because I have a video coming that's kind of similar to this. We don't really expect anyone to use something like this, and obviously neither does Apple, because it seems like none of the good apps work on this thing. So you can't really use this phone anymore. I mean, you maybe have it for, I don't know, a music player or something, but beyond anything that's already installed on this thing, it's kind of useless. I'm glad I only paid $30 for it. So my time with the iPhone 4S was interesting. I don't enjoy it. I would not recommend anyone do it. I think it's time for an upgrade. I'm going to use the iPhone 5C for a week. So make sure you hit subscribe and watch that video. I'll see you next time. Peace and love.